New York City. If only everything down there was really as peaceful as it looks from up here.
Spider-Man, the animated series, while also known in the other territories as Marvel Comics Spider-Man and the New Spider-Man. The animated television series ran a total of 5 seasons starting from November 19, 1994. It is based on the Marvel properties of Spider-Man, and it's the second longest series based on a Marvel character. The one that pulls ahead is X-Men the Animated Series. The series was actually the 4th animated series in the Marvel Universe. The ones that predated was X-Men, Iron Man, and the Fantastic Four. This was the 4th cartoon series based on the character, which included 2 titles called Spider-Man, which was established in 1967 and then followed up in 1981 with the same title, and then the 3rd, which predates this one, called Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Now, at the time of the formulation of this series, there was a very critical problem at Marvel. They were facing bankruptcy and possibly going out of business in numerous times, and this was established as a way to try to recover themselves. Javier Rod, who became synonymous over Spider-Man through the past few decades, would actually start to build the Marvel animated universe. But that wasn't the only objective Javier Rod had at the time. Considering he started a brand company called Toy Biz, which they could use as conjunction with the series and make a massive profit due to the popularity of the toy sales. And of course, a tremendous help with the deal with Fox Kids, which at the time was known as the most popular network for children television. The idea Javier Rod had was to make something as close to Batman, the animated series. And they were actually negotiating people who were working on the Batman animated series at the time to run the show, but it didn't fall through. Stanley brought in John Seppert Jr., but then just a week later, he was released, and then a couple of months would go by, and there'd be no progress on the series, until he was brought back by Stan Lee, and then the series went into immediate production.
Yeah, hold it right there. Yeah, like I was saying, you're gonna love working down here. It's cool in the summer and warm in the winter.
And as you can see, the very first early storyboards remain intact as they went on to production with the first episode. However, the Lizard wasn't the first choice of antagonist that they wanted to utilize in the first episode.
What? It's got me! What? Help! Ah!
They were originally going to have Venom as the first villain, but they chose to build Venom up slowly in the series, quoting, "Save the big guns for later in the season," which I agree was the better choice. However, I would have chosen Doc Ock as the first villain, but it's okay. They brought in famous comic book writer and creator of The Punisher, Gary Conway, for political reasons, due to the fact that there was some turmoil in the Marvel industry. By electing to go within this direction, they were largely sticking close to canon by what Stan Lee wrote. So no one can say, "Hey, you don't like this." Well, Stan Lee wrote it.
City. If only everything down there was really as peaceful as it looks from up here.
Now, once we get into this episode, this was actually not the first appearance of this version of Spider-Man. He actually appeared in an episode of X-Men called Child of Light, which aired 2 months before this, and also appeared in Fantastic Four episode titled Nightmare in Green. which aired 4 days before this series went live. Well, technically, Scarlet Spider was an alternate version of Spider-Man within the episode of the Fantastic Four. Nonetheless, this is an early appearance of a version of Spider-Man within this year. When it came to the first episode, they wanted to import the basic stuff of Peter Parker's life that is important to him, which is going to school, him struggling with work, struggling with money, and within the having a major struggle with dealing with Aunt May and his relationships, and of course, fighting with villains which would constantly get in his way. As we get into the first episode, we are introduced with 2 sewer workers climbing ladders beneath the streets of New York, working on electric units. Unfortunately, they are confronted by the lizard. One escapes, but the other one gets captured. The subway worker who escapes still believes the creature is after him, so he drives frantically into the streets, which catches the attention of Spider-Man, who rescues him as the vehicle flies overboard into the Hudson River. Spider-Man was voiced by Christopher Daniel Barnes, who also did the voice of Prince Eric of the original animated motion picture of Little Mermaid. He continued voicing Spider-Man in other TV shows adaptations and numerous video games. He also played Greg Brady in the Brady Bunch movies.
George, a kiss? In public? Oh, you're so romantic.
Now after, whatever the hell that was, he transitions to the other side of the story of Peter Parker on what he has to do on a daily basis working at the Daily Bugle for J. Jonah Jameson, who was voiced by the late legendary actor Ed Asner, who has been in everything in show business, but is predominantly known for playing the role Lou Grant in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, who was also a newspaper bugle boss, so it was like a no-brainer to cast him in the role. Also, we are introduced to the character of Eddie Brock, who of course in the near future is going to become Venom, and here they are told to get photos of the lizard, and the first person that does it is going to get a $1,000 reward.
One to get a photo of the lizard for my nightly news gets a $1,000 bonus.
After this, we are going to be introduced to the very important theme in Spider-Man's life, which is responsibility. Because the first thing he thinks about with the $1,000 is exactly what anybody would do before his life hits him in the face.
$1,000? I could put it down on a new motorcycle, maybe a car. Wait till I tell Aunt May.
Now, of course, Aunt May had problems of her own, stacks of bills and possibly more coming her way, and all Peter can think about is about himself. And this is important when it comes to Peter Parker. When the last time he thought about himself and ignored responsibility, it resulted into Uncle Ben's death. After that, we are introduced to another character, Deborah Whitman, who works science alongside with Peter in the school. They are on their way to the university discussing the footprint picture Parker took and about Kurt Connors himself, as they are both students of his. Once inside the school, his spider sense goes off. Now I like that the creators of the show was clever enough to visually animate Spider-Man's senses, whereas in the past iterations of the character, they used to substitute it with out loud narration. Now back to the story. We realize the lizard is in Kurt Connors' office, taking a valuable equipment. Now in this moment in time, Peter starts to connect some of the puzzle pieces together, as he remembered working with Kurt Connors on a radiation device called Neogenic Recombinator. By using this device, he used it on a lizard DNA onto a mouse. By doing this, the mouse would successfully grow its missing limb.
And a mammal, and the Neogenic Recombinator.
Incredible.
No, Peter. This is just the beginning.
Spider-Man shows up in Connor's house and pretends to ask questions to his family until Eddie Brock yells outside the house as the lizard appears and approaches him. Which is going to bring us the first confrontation between the lizard out in the open. As Spider-Man is nearly defeated, Connor's son Billy screams out "Dad!" And here is where we're going to get some interesting backstory.
Kurt called it the neogenic recombinator. He used it on himself as an experiment to make his arm grow again.
Eddie Brock overhears this. Luckily, Spider-Man catches up to Eddie as he runs away and webs him up on a light post.
That webbing will melt in a couple of hours.
You can't do this!
I already have. I won't let you ruin Connor's life.
Unfortunately, when Spider-Man gets back to Connor's family, Dr. Connors, aka the Lizard, abducts his wife Martha. Spider-Man now has to pursue the Lizard into the sewers. In the sewer, he finds the missing worker who leads him to the right direction. Hearing a scream from Martha, Spider-Man swings away, coming to her rescue, where he sees Connor holding the neogenic recombinator, stating his master plan.
The neogenic recombinators are these electrical conduits. Every man, woman, and child. I can transform all of them.
So yeah, his big master plan is to turn everybody into a lizard, so no one could judge anybody and live peacefully. So Spider-Man isn't going to have any of that shit as two of them get into a battle. The conflict comes to an end as both characters submerge underwater. As Spider-Man reactivates the neogenic recombinator, a blast goes off, turning Connor back to himself again. Then the following day, J. Jonah Jameson along with Eddie Brock with two police officers are brought into Connor's home. Eddie Brock is adamant that he is going to reveal Kurt Connors as the Lizard in flesh and blood with no need for pictures. Bad news for Eddie, Kurt Connors opens the door normal with his family alongside with him.
I'll show you the lizard himself.
You better be right about this.
Boss, if I'm wrong, I'll eat today's issue of the Bugle.
J. Jonah Jameson, what brings you here this morning?
You want it cooked or raw?
After that, we go over to see Peter Parker with Aunt May, who finally has some money due to Peter's reward, and he shows the lizard and the Spidey shot in the newspaper to her. Aunt May immediately is concerned that Peter is willing to follow Spider-Man into the sewers to get pictures, so she goes to happily make him some food. The episode ends with Spidey swinging into New York City looking for new adventures. My thoughts about the episode. I think it was very serviceable. I mean, they set out what they wanted to do. It looks good, specifically for the time being. They established the true core of Spider-Man at who he is, alongside setting up characters like Eddie Brock, aka the Venom, which they originally wanted to do first. And there's quite a few Easter eggs in this episode as well. And like the mention of Ned Leeds, also the reference of the Lizard King, and other notable things like the Incredible Hulk, Defenders, and the Avengers, getting name dropped by Spider-Man. Spider-Man the Animated Series has remained still to this day my favorite Spider-Man cartoon version of this character. Anytime it's on TV or I'm looking for something to watch, it has my full attention the entire time. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and thank you for watching. Web you later.